What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Stand Your Ground. I'm your host, as always, Alex Benison. I am joined this week by one half of the Mighty Whites podcast, KC.
How are you doing, mate?
Hi, I'm not bad. We're back after our little international break.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we could probably talk about that for an hour and a half and then finally get into the Premier League stuff.
I'd rather not, if I'm honest.
You want to really break down England's performances?
Our three cutting-edge games that we played. We will talk about them eventually, but I guess first off we should say congratulations to Jack and Sarah, the other half of the Mighty Whites podcast. Jack and Sarah have just given. Well, I'm going to say Jack's given birth, but Jack hasn't. Sarah's just given birth to their first daughter. Casey has finally been replaced.
Not yet.
Not until she can drive.
Yeah.
But big congratulations to both of them.
Yeah, great news for them. Everything went well, I think. And I'm very good at talking about children, as you can imagine.
Well, you deal with them enough. Or you used to before the pandemic.
Yeah, not babies.
Is that too young for your
It's too young for me. Let's move on, though, before this gets taken out of context.
It wouldn't take much. So, yeah, we might as well start with what we did miss. England's performances in the 3 World Cup qualifiers. As I think everyone expected, 3 wins. But not as convincing as everyone was wanting. There's been a lot of people criticising the way that Southgate set up the teams for these qualifiers, saying that he wasn't playing enough attacking football. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, to an extent. It's especially in the second game when we were playing with 2 holding midfielders against Albania. I know it was only a week ago, but I can't remember who.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I know that's how he's going to set up when we start playing bigger teams, but there was no need to be playing Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips in there together for a game like that.
As a Leeds fan, were you holding your breath, just hoping that Phillips didn't pick up an injury?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Gareth Southgate used him more than anyone else.
Well, Bielsa's got his fitness up to peak physical condition, so he can obviously be the only player to play all 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at this point, especially at this point in his international career, always happy to see Calvin Phillips playing, and just waiting for more Leeds players to come in. Basically, at this point, Jack Harrison, get him in there. Leeds' own Stuart Dallas, if BT Sport is to be believed that he's not actually from Northern Ireland, he's from the local area.
To be honest, if I'm looking at Leeds' team, then the closest person is probably Jack Harrison. Because unfortunately for Luke Ayling, although he is a very good right back, there is about 7 good English right backs at the moment.
Well, you are forgetting about Pat Bamford.
No, not good enough. Ollie Watkins all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I had this conversation yesterday with someone that obviously, I think if Jamie Vardy's available, I don't think either Watkins or Bamford gets near that team.
Well, Vardy's retired internationally.
Yeah, there was talk that he might come out of retirement, but I think he's probably left it too late for that now. I don't think you can just come out of retirement a few weeks before a tournament and go, I'm available again.
You tell Ibra that.
Well, that's different. He's God.
The man does what he wants. And if you chat shit about him, you will get banged.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get banged or feel the wrath of God, so...
Don't lie, you do want to get banged. It's been a while.
Yeah, true. Lockdown's been rough.
Yeah, I do understand a lot of people's frustrations, especially the San Marino game. There is no need to play so defensively against San Marino. I know we won 5-0. And off the back of that performance, you could probably say it should have been 8. But with the amount of attacking players that England have, you would have expected a lot more going forward and more forward thinking from Southgate. But then again, with the Euros right around the corner, he's probably is just trying to embed a team that he wants to start that tournament with.
Yeah, I mean, the San Marino game, I think my biggest frustration was I understand playing against a team like that everyone kind of wants to get on the score sheet. But I think, like, at times, like, I think if you look at it on the base level, like, Jesse Lingard looked quite good. He was very lively on the ball, always creating chances in that. But in terms of his decision-making throughout the game, like, he was so desperate to get a goal that I ended up thinking he didn't actually play that well, just because 3-4 times he was in a position where if he just squares it, England have a tap in. Yeah. And every time he's taking on these shots, and you just like, just pass it, mate. Like, I know you want to score. I know you have had a bit of a rough go of it before you went to West Ham, but just pass it. That's all it needs.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for him in a way, because I think if he does get that goal, does he silence a few more critics saying that he shouldn't have been in the England squad? I mean, he is a great young youth prospect coming through at West Ham. But is he really going to be in Southgate's squad come Euro 2021, I guess we'll call it?
No, I think it's still Euro 2020. I think that's my favourite part. Just keep calling it Euro 2020 and pretend nothing has happened.
Yeah. To be honest, when you look at the internationals that have taken place during this period, the teams that are in our group seem to have a decent showing in the games that they've played. I mean, I think Scotland's been quite decent in their World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, much better than the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
Republic of Ireland struggling to a 1-0 defeat to Luxembourg.
It's Germany.
That being the same team that also drew 1-0 with Qatar. Like, I don't know if you saw that. I think it was after the Luxembourg game. I can't remember now. With the interview with Stephen Kenny, the Ireland manager, who was like, "Look, it's going to take time to get into a new process." I'm like, "Yeah, but it is Luxembourg, though."
Yeah.
You've got to be beating them.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, if you're a Leeds fan, you're absolutely loving the international break, seeing Gianni Alioski getting a win against Germany.
Yeah, always nice. It's one of the things now, especially getting back into the Premiership, when you kind of see more and more Leeds players featuring. Obviously for someone like Calvin Phillips, it's a bit more special. But yeah, I mean, Gianni Alioski's been a regular in that Macedonia team for years now, and absolutely huge win for them.
Yeah. One of the major talking points, actually, from the international break, and this is going to sound really weird how we're going to get onto this, was Gareth Bale's hoodie that said, like, elbow racism out, and then he elbowed the player that was allegedly racist towards the Ranger player in the Europa League. But which we know racism is a thing. Well, everyone knows that racism should not take place, whether it's on a football pitch or if it's in real life, especially not between professional players. Professional players should know, or should be decent enough to not carry things like that onto the pitch. We've just had a message from Jack actually saying in La Liga, there's been Valencia have walked off the pitch after another alleged racial insult was thrown towards one of their players. It's a sad thing to see that things like this are still happening in modern day football.
Yeah, and sadly, I think one of the things that always gets me is you look at the things that football's always looking to stamp down on, and the things they're willing to take a big stance against. Stuff like getting players putting slogans on their shirts and endorsing gambling companies and stuff like that, and then you look at the way that racism is treated, and it's as much as I don't kind of want to pick on them, but over here Millwall's kind of the go-to club where it's been an issue for a long time now. And all that ever happens is, we've got a mission statement in place, and we're going to try and increase club awareness and stuff like that. You're just like, if you can't just have one person just continue to do something, or one small group of people continue to do something, say, well, it's just a small group. Like, unfortunately, if it's a case of one person's letting the group down, that's fine. Like, have teams play games behind closed doors, because I think all of a sudden, if people are paying money for season tickets and then being told they have to miss 5 games and no, there won't be a refund, I think more people will be very quick to speak out against stuff like that. Now, is that the motivation behind why you should speak out? Absolutely not. But I just find certainly between the FA, between UEFA, between FIFA, when you see, even times when, I think you've gone back a few years now, when Mario Balotelli kicked a ball into the crowd because of the abuse he'd received, and Milan are the team getting, fines from FIFA for his actions. You're like, well, he's been racially abused, and you're saying that he shouldn't be getting upset about that. Like, you can't just say to players, just ignore it, like, because of that, like, I think players should be well within their right to walk off the field, and I think they should be well within their right to say, no, we're not playing until, if we feel like we're going to be abused here, then why should we go back out?
Yeah, the two that really stand out in modern memory are this Valencia game that's just happened. The players did walk off the pitch, but did return without the player who was allegedly insulted by another member of the opposite team. And then the PSG Champions League game where one of the coaching staff was racially abused by the fourth official.
Yeah.
They were at Istanbul that walked off due to that.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think it must be hard as a player who's probably good mates with the person who has been insulted or been racially abused, to come back onto the pitch, especially the same day, like in context of this Valencia game, to then try and carry on and play with a calm head. Like, I don't know if the other team then substituted the other player and just took him off so that he wasn't involved, or whether they've left him on. I haven't seen anything about that bit yet, but it must be hard as a Valencia player to come on and think, is it even worth playing this game now?
Yeah, and I think one of the things it really needs is, if it's someone in your team, or if it's your fans that are causing the problem, then that team needs to stand up against that. A few years back when England played Bulgaria, I think it was, there was a lot of racial slurs being chanted by the crowd, and I think Bulgaria's captain actually went out and over the tannoy was telling players not to, telling the fans not to do things like that, because the game would get abandoned and the game would get called off. And it's all
well, that might be an issue. Yeah, just to keep following on until Casey does return, I imagine that his laptop has probably either just packed in or his internet has just given up. I think we're back.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, not a clue what just happened there. My screen just something went wrong. I'm like, yes, it clearly did. It needs, and I don't just mean players just taking the knee now, because I can understand why a number of players and teams have got to the point where it's like, well, I know we're taking the knee, but what comes next? And it needs players and fans and then everyone to speak out against racist acts and call it out, and then it needs to be followed up with a subsequent punishment.
Yeah, and hopefully things like this will be fully stamped out sooner rather than later, not just for football's sake, but for the players that go out there each week to earn a living and feel like they'll be able to do it comfortably without being racially abused on the pitch.
Yeah, that's a if I'm just trying to imagine where if I was working at my regular job and someone came up to me and it's very hard for me to say it as a white person in a predominantly white country to say being racially abused, but if someone was giving me some sort of offensive abuse, I can't imagine that happen. People aren't willing to on the whole aren't willing to do that to your face. It's all over Twitter, it's all over the internet, or in the case of sports, in large crowds, typically when you're away, and there's kind of really no consequence of it. And then you kind of get a few players who I always not funny, because obviously racism isn't funny, but you're going to racially abuse a player on a football field. Like, you must know that if that gets out, you are going to be in for a very difficult rest of the game at that point. And I think as Rangers kind of showed when that happened a few weeks ago to Glenn Kamara, then if nothing else, the opposition is going to lash out at you a bit.
Yeah, or maybe Gareth Bale might just do it for you as well.
Yeah.
But we'll move on from that horrible topic. Onto the game roundups. We missed maybe 2 games before the international break, and I aren't going back to try and find which ones they were.
No, it wasn't a Leeds game. No one cares.
So we'll start with quite a funny game, actually, because this is not a scoreline you would have expected. Chelsea at home losing 5-2 to Sam Allardyce's West Brom.
Yeah, interesting game to love watching the highlights of this. West Brom scored 8 goals against Chelsea this season. Because was it a 3-3 draw they had at the game at the Hawthorns?
Yeah, they were 3-0 up in that game.
Yeah, it absolutely fell to pieces when Thiago got sent off. Like, I've never, to the point where a Sam Johnson goal kick bounces through the middle of the defence and West Brom score. Like, how as a team competing to try and get in the Champions League do you allow that to happen? And it just got worse.
Yeah, I mean, to concede 2 goals in 2 minutes in added time in the first half, I mean, it just, I don't know what it was. Whether Chelsea just fell to pieces because of Thiago Silva being sent off, or Tuchel just didn't get the management right, because he's normally a good tactical coach. He's very Mourinho-esque in he knows how.
Going into this game, they'd not conceded a goal in 7.
They'd not lost under Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah,
and now his first loss is to Big Sam.
And I think, what's the other record? I think Big Sam has won the most games with different teams at Stamford Bridge. Like, I think he's the only manager to win at Stamford Bridge with 3 different teams, at Bolton, Palace, and now West Brom as well. Like, I mean, I found it quite funny because they started using. There was a few people I heard using the word research. Is this a West Brom resurgence now? It's like, well, I don't see it lasting long term, if I'm being honest. But I think by the time they scored the 3rd or 4th goal, West Brom were playing the ball around as if they were 2nd or 3rd. Like, there was some really lovely football going on. Mateus Pereira was having a field day. Callum Robinson has only ever scored Premier League goals against Chelsea.
Yeah.
Like, it was a bit of a crazy day.
Yeah, I think there's one part, I think it's Mason Mount's goal, where Timo Werner goes straight through, and you can tell he's got no confidence.
Oh God. Oh, thank God Mason's here. Oh, thank God Mason's here. You take it, pal.
Yeah, you could tell that his confidence is shot to bits, especially after his miss against North Macedonia in midweek. It will have been. Yeah, I know they've said this quite a few times, and I think it's since Torres signed for him, or it might have even been Shevchenko, that that Chelsea just have a curse on the player, the main striker they seem to bring in. Whoever they bring in seems to be broken. Who's not Didier Drogba?
I was going to say, and unfortunately, that's Didier Drogba, quite rightly so, has become the measuring sticks of strikers at Chelsea because he was just that good. He was fantastic defensively. He was ridiculously strong, and it felt like he kind of grew out of the whole diving and rolling around thing, and just became this absolute world class all around striker. And the list of names, especially in the early days when you kind of looked through. I went, they've got Shevchenko in, they've got Crespo. It's like what you do playing Football Manager. You kind of just give yourself a budget of 150 million and you're like, right, who am I going to bring in here?
Yeah, we've got Deco on the bench to bring on for 45.
Yeah, and striker after striker that just never quite fit in. They have had some successes, obviously, with Diego Costa. You've probably got to say Olivier Giroud is a success, despite Arsenal's and Chelsea's attempts to always find a better striker than him. But yeah, in the transfer market, when they're throwing money at strikers, it's typically not worked out too well.
I wasn't perplexed because I could understand the whole point in signing Timo Werner. The guy had so much hype around him in the Bundesliga. And he was just scoring goals for fun for Leipzig, so it was understandable that someone was going to throw money at him. But Chelsea had Tammy Abraham, who, let's be honest, he had a decent first run in the Premier League scoring goals, and still went, we need a different striker.
Yeah, and if you're Tammy Abraham, it's got to put a dent in your confidence a bit, because that's the manager essentially saying, you're a good player. We don't want to sell you, but we want someone else. And it was it's the problem I have with Frank Lampard's transfer policy is, look, if you've got that money to spend, I think you make 3 of those signings. I think you bring in your goalkeeper, you bring in Chilwell, and probably Timo Werner, and then you leave it at that, because it's a good team. You've made the Champions League. What is the point in trying to make wholesale changes? Just add to the quality of it. You don't overhaul it. To the point now where you've got Fikayo Tomori's out on loan at AC Milan. He's a great player.
I'd love Tomori at Man United.
Yeah, same at Leeds. I don't know how much. Well, for once we're overstocked at centre back now, but yeah, he was a great player. But what's the other thing that's come out about them today as well? That Kepa and Rudiger have had a training ground bust up as well, I think.
Oh, bust up between the two players that aren't playing.
Kepa's unhappy, is he? No.
Nick enjoyed Tammy Abraham. Tammy Abraham, who really wants to go back to Aston Villa, but now Aston Villa have replaced him, so he's got nowhere to go.
Honestly, I know I'm not a Chelsea fan, so I'm never a big lover of any of their players. But I'll never get past Kepa during that League Cup final. So any misery that comes his way, I'm okay with. No, if you're going to be that much of a dick and refuse to be substituted, nah.
He'll be a top-class manager once he retires. But we'll move on to something that'll make you even happier, which is Leeds United 2 and Sheffield United 1.
Yeah, a good win, but at time we had a couple of very good spells in this game, but it did feel like we cruised, I think, for the most part. Especially second half, and which was a little bit dangerous because towards the end, Sheffield United had 2 good chances that they could have scored from. The game should have been out of sight, I think, with half an hour to go. But on the whole, no one was really slipping over on the pitch because we've had about 3 weeks now to actually let it drain properly and seemed playable for once. Rafinha's reaction when he sets up Jack Harrison for the goal, just to turn and look at the camera like, "Yep, that's what I do." Like he just knew. He just knew. I think the main talking point is obviously the whole incident with Baldock and Tyler Roberts with the challenge. Baldock subsequently getting concussed, possibly should have been sent off. The one thing I found about that was I found it very interesting that it got so little mention. Never really got mentioned on Match of the Day as regards to the challenge. It was all about his concussion, which is a problem. I fully understand that. But it was a tackle that was wrapped around Tyler Roberts' shins. He ended up landing on his neck. Yeah. You know, it was at best it was a yellow card. You know, did people complain about Baldock being allowed back on the pitch? Like, my complaint is he was allowed back on the pitch because he should have been sent off.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me thinking, has the ref seen the injury and then forgot about the challenge? But that's what VAR is there for. They are there to step in and say, no, you should look at this. This is probably a red card challenge, whether he's got a concussion or not. It's still a red card challenge, and get him off the field for his own safety.
Yeah, there was no real mention of VAR reviewing it or anything like that. Which, again, you compare it to, and the Baldock tackle was worse, but like if you remember Thiago's reaction to his second yellow card, it's essentially the same thing. The ball is gone. I know he's got the shot in, but you have two-footed him like. And then he stands, and I think the only way I think he appeals that is if Thiago is there saying, "Yeah, but look, ref, he took the shot, so it can't have been that." Like, no, you hit him after he took the shot, mate. Like, get off. Yeah, like you say, the only thing I can think is if he was down that long, that it kind of left the referee's head. But even then, it's not really excusable for that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something VAR can look into because, as we know, VAR is there to review everything, but also not to review everything.
Well, like now as well, will that, because he wasn't booked for it, will that be looked at by the FA and will they take retrospective action? I don't think they will, because it wasn't violent conduct or something, which is typically what that happens for. But yeah, it was disappointing. And look, obviously, I don't think Baldock should have been allowed back on the pitch, and quite why you'd not just keep your concussion sub on until half time and give him a decent amount of time to see if he comes around or not. Because I think for the most part, footballers, if you ask them if they're okay to play, will go, "Yep, not a problem."
Yeah.
So again, it's one of those now where I think we need to keep looking at this and whether it's a case of having, neutral, medical staff to assess players for concussions. So it's not your own club making the decision, because again, you're going to have that bias of, well, he's one of our best players. That's why he's starting. So we need him back on the field.
Yeah. Just to touch back on the FA point, though, if the FA do step in now and go, "Oh, that were a really bad challenge, we're going to give you a 2-match ban," but I'm sure he now has to start a 10-day concussion period where he's not allowed to train or play anyway. So he's going to miss those games regardless.
Yeah.
So they've kind of left themselves in a bit of a sticky situation. And maybe this will be used as an incident where they'll call back to it and go, "No, we need to learn from this. And although he is injured, we still need to make the right call and send him off because the challenge wasn't appropriate."
Yeah. Not to mention they had another player go off with a concussion. It was Jaden Bogle, I think, went off with a concussion as well, and he was just kind of caught by a flailing arm. But when he was walked off, like, they didn't even try to keep him on. You could tell he was gone. You could just see it in his eyes.
Yeah, and this is going to sound completely weird. I was watching one of the rugby league games, Wigan versus Wakefield, and there was a nothing like challenge. A player went down, and you could see it in his face. One of the physios ran onto the pitch, checked him out, and said, "No, you're going to have to go for a concussion test." And you could see it in his face, going, "Really? I don't feel any different." But he failed his concussion test, so you could even feel completely fine, and there still be that seed of doubt. So now you've got to think: was it the physio's fault for not saying no? We need to take him for a full test, or was it the manager's fault for going, "No, we're just going to throw him back on"?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like in some instances, you can know you've taken a hit to the head, but it not really affect you for 5, 10, 15 minutes. It can take a little bit of time to kick in. So that's why you need to take this time to actually assess them. And it's all well and good kind of doing can you follow my finger? How many fingers am I holding up? Yeah, you're good to go.
Yeah.
It needs time. For us as a junior football coach, if we have any suspicions of a concussion, you do not go back on the pitch. That's it. And as unfortunate as it is for a kid or a player to kind of be told, "No, I'm sorry, you can't do it." Like, it's for the best. Like, this is for your health. This is what we got to do. I don't care if it's an important game. Like, I'm looking out for your health here. That's the focus.
Yeah, but aside from that, a good 3 points for you. Would have been a bit funny if Heckingbottom had got a draw and he's returned to Leeds.
Honestly, the doubt in me that I saw us absolutely dominating that game and losing 1-0. Like, I was so glad we scored early, because honestly, it would have harkened back to our days in the Championship of just playing really nice football, attack after attack, and then Sheffield United hit us on the counter attack.
Yeah. Well, the stats of 23 shots to 9 and you having 8 on target and them having 1 does call 1-1 draw, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we'll move on from that to a game at the top of the table, which I kind of enjoyed watching this, but at the same time, it felt very safe. It wasn't as free-flowing football that I expected it to be. But City 2, Leicester 0. I think there's no way that City drop any amount of points for Man United to catch them now.
Well, I think they need to. I think mathematically they now need to just win four more games and they're champions.
Yeah.
But there is such a big gap there. And while Man City will probably drop points, so Man United are going to drop points as well. So, yeah, like you say, I didn't really get into this game, to be honest, while I was watching it. I found it. Man City were very dominant throughout. I think, you kind of saw how compact Leicester were playing towards the end of the first half, when I think between your centre-back and Jamie Vardy, there was maybe only 20 yards. They were having to defend very deep and try to counter. But up to about 35 minutes, I think it was, Jamie Vardy had only had about 4 or 5 touches all game. Like, the Man City did such a good job of just retaining possession, keeping in sort of Leicester's half and pressing them again. And a couple of decent chances without really troubling. But, from that point, I never really saw Leicester getting back into it. Outside, I know they had the goal disallowed, but it just seemed Man City's game all day.
Yeah, and I think we probably should touch on it just after this bit. I was just looking at Man City's games that they've got left. They've got you at home, Villa away, Crystal Palace away, Chelsea at home, Newcastle away, Brighton away, then Everton at home. They can win 4 of those next 7.
Yeah, so it's a pretty comfortable run in for them. I think Everton, I know that's kind of at the end of the run, but Everton, if they play anything like, they can cause problems, but it's kind of just which Everton team you'll get now. Chelsea will be an interesting one with Tuchel going up against him against Guardiola for that one. But for the most part, you look at those and just there's some very winnable games in there.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing that I was going to say was Sergio Aguero starting for Man City, but it'll be his final season.
I am absolutely devastated. He is possibly my favourite modern day non-Leeds player. Like, I love Sergio Aguero. And just such a great goal scorer. He's been such a big part of that Man City team as well. And I'm absolutely devastated I'll never get to see him play against Leeds. Like, I know he'd tear as a new one, but I would love to have seen him against Leeds.
Not in person. You might see him next weekend.
Well, yeah. He could tear as a new one next week because we've obviously got a run of fixtures now of Man City, Liverpool, then Man United, which is what everyone wants.
Yeah, I do like the touch of they're giving him a statue outside of the ground. And if you think about Man City's last 10 years, the three players to get a statue should be Vincent Kompany, Sergio Aguero, and David Silva. And I know, I said this when I first heard about it, one of those players is still, two of them are still playing, and they're going to have a statue. But you've got to think, that's Man City's history now. We are living in the Man City era.
Yeah, I think the issue is it's very hard to hear of building a statue of people who are you still want to say you're building a statue of someone who's still playing for you. I love Calvin Phillips, but I'd give it at least a decade until we start thinking about a statue for him, at least. But yeah, I suppose when you've been as successful as City have been, and you, obviously there's discussions to be had about them not winning the Champions League, but in terms of domestic football, there's been very few clubs that can touch them this last 10 years. And honestly, like there have been some very big names in that team. Like, yeah, as you mentioned there, Yaya Toure could be on that list as well. Like, he was probably him and Kompany, I think, were the two initial signings that kind of kicked that them getting to the next level off.
Yeah.
But once you start putting statues of everyone up, where if this was Twitch, you'd be like, but where does it end? Then you've got a statue of Edin Dzeko outside your ground.
See, I'd be fine with Edin Dzeko, but it's when you start getting the Stefan Savic's and the Jovic's that barely played, but they were there.
Yeah. Look, obviously this is the best part of Man City's history, and yes, I know they've had some big moments and they've had years when they've kind of been in contention and stuff like that. But this is it is the biggest part of their history so far. I'd like to say I wouldn't. I'd be against it if it was happening at Leeds, in the sense of building statues of everyone. But I don't know, if we were winning the Premier League every other year, like, I don't care. Put up as many statues of. I was going to say Kiko Casilla, but not Kiko Casilla. Please don't build a statue of him. He's a poor choice.
Out of everyone.
Who else is on the bench? Jamie Shackleton. Put up as many statues of Jamie Shackleton as you like.
Yeah, the player I was going to was Leif Davis. But then again, you couldn't
Between
build
them two, though, you'd save on materials because they're both tiny.
Yeah, but you couldn't build a statue of Leif Davis because by the time you finished it, he'd probably grown another inch.
No way he's as tall as he says he is. I'm sorry, I don't believe in this growth spurt he had over the summer. He had that stuff that Leo Messi was on to make sure he got to 5'7" or whatever it was.
So we'll move on to the final game of the Saturday. Liverpool beating Arsenal 3-0. Diogo Jota seems to be the kind of missing component that Liverpool have needed. I don't know what it is. Like, when they signed him, I didn't rate him as much as what other people did when he were at Wolves. I thought he was a good player by all means, but I didn't think he was as good as what he's shown at Liverpool so far.
Yeah, I think I feel fairly much the same way. Like that, he was a good player in a decent team, but the idea of kind of translating that to, I say what you will about Liverpool this season, but at the time, essentially moving into the best team in the world, seemed like a step too far. But no, he's taken to it very well, and obviously he's kind of had a bit interrupted with injury, but yeah, he's taken to it very well. They've got a decent young right back as well, who might get an England call up one day.
I don't know. He's not that great defensively.
He was well pleased with himself when Jota scored, because I think the camera just zooms in on Trent AlexanderArnold, like, yes. I don't know if he mouthed the words "Take that, Southgate, you bastard," but I'd like to think he did.
He probably sent him a text at half time.
I tell you, I thought Arsenal were very poor in this. Like, I know they had a couple of players missing, so you've kind of got Chambers coming in, and I think Ceballos was in as well. But for that front line, they just, Arsenal as a team offers so little going forward. I don't like. Look, I understand when you kind of look at where Man United are now. That is the argument for giving a manager time, because I still don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a better than good manager. I think he's fine with a very good group of players, but I think better managers would have that team challenging for the title, or at least be closer to Man City. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what Arteta's trying to do with that Arsenal team. Like, I would have, and I've said this before, he'd have been better letting those older players leave and let David Luiz leave, and having a year where they say to the fans, especially a year where it turns out fans aren't going to be in the ground, like, look, we are rebuilding, we're getting young players in, we're giving them game time, and then we're gonna add to that. But we want to get these young players more football now. So you get Nketiah playing more, you get Maitland-Niles playing more, you get Joe Willock playing more, Smith Rowe playing more, and then you supplement that. And you look how good Bukayo Saka's come from just that first team football. And then you add to that. But instead, they've got this team it's kind of built around a number of the older players and players that they were actively looking to move on. And I think it's fine, but I find there to be no discernible style to them, no particular patterns or anything like that. I just find them very disappointing.
Yeah, I was just looking at their starting 11. For me, Gabriel, that was the worst game that I've seen Gabriel play since his move from Lille. He just didn't look comfortable in the back four, especially next to Holding. But you're playing Chambers right back, and you've got two right backs on the bench in Cedric Soares and Hector Bellerin. You've got Eddie Nketiah on the bench, who could play left wing or up top for you. And they just never thought to bring him on. They've got Willian, who they got on a free and is probably on a decent wage, sat on the bench doing nothing. Like Reece Nelson as well is another one who, I know he's not prolific in goal scoring, but he'll create you a chance with his pace and with his dribbling ability. They just don't seem comfortable, or whether they're not playing the type of football Arteta wants them to play, or they're not comfortable with that kind of play. I don't know what it is, but something massively needs to change in the summer for Arsenal to be contending for Champions League or Europa League places next season. Yeah,
I very much feel like the senior players they have in that team are not the leaders they need. I think it was important for them to keep Aubameyang in the summer, and that was great news for them. Whether he's regretting staying on or not leaving now, I don't know. But they're just. I don't know whether they need to find 2 or 3 players who are in their prime and throw money at them and build have them as the spine of the team, and then you supplement them with Saka, with Tierney, with players like that, with Smith Rowe and kind of just have they need that solid spine. And it's very easy for me to say. Obviously, we had a draw with them and then lost 4-2, but in my time watching Arsenal this season, outside of that spell around Christmas when Emile Smith Rowe came into the team and they turned into world beaters for 5 weeks, they've kind of just reverted back to type again and become this very middling team.
Yeah, it seems to be. They also seem to have had the case of throw money at the really good player, and then he just not perform. Like Aubameyang just doesn't. He seems a shadow of the player he has been for the past few seasons. But I guess you kind of expect that with age. He is 31 now. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's in the twilight of his career, but someone who heavily plays with pace, it's going to affect him the older he gets.
Yeah. I'd love to be inside his head now as to whether he feels like he should have left and gone somewhere for a year or two where he's going to win some decent silverware, or whether he was perfectly happy lifting that FA Cup with Arsenal last year and being like, cool, we've done it now.
Lifting, dropping.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Just as a side note, Man United have gone 1-0 down to Brighton. Any guesses on the goal scorer?
Is it lovely Ben White?
No, it's
it's
former Man United player Danny Welbeck.
Of course it is.
So on to the Sunday games. Burnley were leading 2-0. They lost 3-2 to Southampton. Poor Sean Dyche.
Well, I sort of made fun of Super Sunday because when I was a kid, Super Sunday was typically you'd get Arsenal versus Man United, or you'd get your big game Sunday afternoon. And looking through today's list of games, I think Super might be a bit of a stretch. Fulham versus Aston Villa, Newcastle Spurs. None of these are big games, but at least with this one, they provided some entertainment. And I thought Southampton probably worth the win in the end, especially second half. I thought they were really turning the screw on Burnley. Ward-Prowse was very unlucky not to have that goal that cannoned off the underside of the bar.
Yeah.
And for me this season, he's probably, and it could be because I wasn't watching Premier League football regularly. I feel like I want to call him my most improved player of the year, not in terms of his ability, but I feel like the effect he's had on games is greater this year than it has been.
Well, it was a question before Southampton started this season. We're selling Højbjerg, how their midfield was going to cope, and he seems to have stepped up another level to kind of fill that gap as well as being the creative spark.
Yeah, I think his inclusion in the last couple of England squads is very well merited. Really like James Ward-Prowse, and I kind of feel sorry for him in a sense because I think when it comes to England at the Euros, with us typically playing with those two holding midfielders, you're then only looking at a slot for sort of one advanced playmaker or something like that, where it's kind of going to be between him, Jude Bellingham, could be Phil Foden. There's a few players that can kind of fill that central gap.
Yeah, and I mean, it could have been 4-2 for Southampton if, Shea Adams, Scottish Shea Adams, who was born in Leicester, and have finished that one-on-one chance right at the end.
Yeah. Unfortunately, too little, too late. They're not going to pull it back and challenge for the title now.
I don't know. I mean, they're in a comfortable 14th. I think there might be a late run for the Premier League title. Speaking of Jack, couldn't believe how good of a game Southampton versus Burnley was. Danny Ings was outstanding again. Where do you think he goes, if anywhere, in the summer? I don't know whether these rumours about him possibly going to Man City, I don't know if that could happen. If they are looking for an experienced striker who's going to get them goals, then yeah, probably look at Danny Ings. But I don't know. I can't see him leaving.
The thing with the Man City move as well is, as a Man City fan, and purely on name value, I think I'd be a bit disappointed if Danny Ings came in, purely because of the fact that Alfie Haaland's agent and his dad are going around having talks with Europe's biggest clubs, and Man City are openly one of those clubs that are looking at him. Now, whether they're willing to meet, I think Borussia Dortmund are wanting 150 million for him. Which, fair enough, I fully understand why. But if you were kind of linked with Erling Haaland and then someone went, we've not got him, but we've got Danny Ings. Like, look at Danny, he's good, isn't he? You're good at Southampton. Yeah. Go on, Danny. Look, yeah, I can't help but feel it'd be a rough deal on any striker that came in if it wasn't Erling Haaland.
Yeah, FIFA 22's come out. I got your FIFA 19 and it's pre-owned. No,
I thought you were going to say, then here's the cover. Messi, Ronaldo, Ings.
Yeah, and his lovely Man City shirt.
I've always loved that in the US because they have their own different covers for the FIFA game. So it, like, especially when it used to be a couple of players, it would be like Ronaldo, Darlington Nagby, and Zidane. Like, that's what you'd get. Like, you'd get two world-class players and an MLS player.
Well, it was very much the same here, wasn't it? You used to get, I can't remember which one it was, whether it was 16 or 17, and the main player was, on our cover, was Bale and Messi, but the actual one was Marco Reus. So,
yeah, I think that might have been 14 because that was when he was still at Spurs. I think it was just before the move to Real Madrid, wasn't it? So there was the one where he had the Spurs kit on, and then I think when they re-released it in January or whatever it was, they just dubbed the Madrid kit over it. Yeah.
Jack saying, be like when Sol Campbell was on the cover.
That was great. Yeah, Sol Campbell, I'm pretty sure that's FIFA 2000. The ones I feel, I know this is kind of a tangent now that we're going off on, but like I've still got my N64, so I've been playing International Superstar Soccer 98, which is the World Cup edition, which has Ravanelli and Paul Ince on the cover, and they're even on the cartridge for the game. But in the game, because they haven't paid for the license, neither of those players even has their real name. So it's like Imch and Ravoli.
Ravioli.
I'll take a picture at some point. Like, it was because that was always the funny thing with the ISS games, and then kind of moving into the Pro Evo era. So like you'd play as Holland, and the players would be like Orange 57, pass it to Orange 58, like, and you're trying to figure out which one's which because they just haven't paid the money for the license to it.
For fuck's sake, which one's Bergkamp?
And then it got to the point where it's like, well, we're going to include, like, Leeds were never called Leeds. It was always like West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And but they'd always have weird names as well. They'd be like Lake District, and like, who's Lake District? Why is it Aston Villa? It's nowhere near the Lake District. It's Dublin. Like, one of them be Dublin. You're like, but that's Ireland. That's a different country altogether. And then you'd have like, but But we've got one of the big teams and Crystal Palace as well. We can use them properly.
Yeah, the two that I always remember is Arsenal and Newcastle because Michael Owen was on the cover.
Before that, it had been Kalina. A referee had been on the cover of a football game.
Just pointing at your soul.
Oh, mate, terrifying. Every time you got that game out there, the man knew how to point.
Yeah, but I can't see Danny Ings leaving Southampton. If Man City are going to get a striker, especially with FFP being it's been stopped for the summer transfer window, they are going to splash the cash out on someone. But if you want to go check out my transfers article that I wrote on WTBdotcom, I said that he should have gone and got Ivan Toney.
That'd be a big step up. I think Ivan Toney would do well with a lot of clubs. To be honest, I know after we've spoken about them, any transfer target I looked at and go, Arsenal should probably just throw some money at him. Toney, Ings, anyone really. Anyone half decent who's younger than 27, get him in.
You know who they should throw some money at? Joelinton, because he knows how to score against Spurs. Newcastle 2, Spurs 2. I watched the first half of this game, and I was really impressed with Newcastle's performance up until they scored. How does a team score and then become that much worse?
Again, speaking of teams where I don't know what the plan is, Christ, Newcastle are bad. They're being shit, and somehow not getting dragged into the relegation zone just yet. But Fulham are trying.
Yeah, to be honest, you say Super Sunday. Yeah, when you look at the games on paper, they're not the most exciting ones. But the two mid games, really meant the most at the bottom of the table, especially with Fulham. Well, they're now 3 points behind Newcastle. Newcastle have got a game in hand on them, and they've got to play each other on the final day of the season. I mean,
tasty.
It's shaping up to be quite an exciting finish to the end of the relegation, depending on if either Fulham can keep this gap close or if Newcastle don't just keep dropping points.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that'll be interesting to see as kind of each week passes by. It's just going to be more and more pressure on Fulham to get points, and every game is just going to become bigger and bigger for them. And so it's kind of the old cliche is they've got whatever it is, 7 cup finals left or 8 cup finals left, and I've come around to Fulham a bit. I think at the start of this season, me and Jack were hammering Scott Parker and Fulham a bit, but fair play, they've kind of come into their own since January. Not in as much as they're not winning games, but they're being more competitive, and they were actually playing some decent football, and it's I didn't feel like, whereas teams like Wigan, it'd be when they were in the Premier League, the whole thing with them was like, but they're playing football the right way, but I always felt that was to the detriment of their actual performances in games and the outcome. Whereas I think Scott Parker has now actually got them playing competitive football that's actually some way decent, and is now giving them a bit of a chance at least.
Yeah. I think I said it'll have been a few podcasts ago that I said, I don't understand why Newcastle aren't playing Dwight Gale, because I think Dwight Gale is the best striker that they've got. They played Dwight Gale in this game, and then Jack has the stat up. Newcastle had 5.5 XG in their last 7 games. They had 3.3 against Spurs. Mourinho out. Yeah, I'll be surprised if that isn't trending by, 8 o'clock? I think Dwight Gale needs more chances starting for Newcastle, because I think he just offers them something different. And he's a goal scorer. He is a finisher.
Yeah, I mean, in my sort of limited experience watching Joe Linton, I find he offers very little. Like, I don't think he's particularly good at pressing. I don't think his link-up play's that good. He's not nearly a regular goal scorer. So I don't know what he offers you as kind of your striker in that situation. At least with Dwight Gale, you get a bit of pace. He's very lively, can press well. And at least that way, you know, in the games we played against Newcastle, it always seemed so easy for our back line to play around Joel Linton. It wasn't as if he was ever cutting off passes. So at least with someone like Dwight Gale, you get a bit less time on the ball. You need someone who's going to hurry you a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Dwight Gale just got Joe Linton to score, and it's not something he does often.
No.
But moving on to the final game, Villa 3, Fulham 1. Oh, God, Fulham, if you could have just held on.
I've got to admit, I haven't seen this one.
Fulham, it was a bit of a cagey first half, I must admit. It was one of those where it was few and far between, not many great chances either side. A penalty was awarded in the first half, but was rescinded right at the very end. Lamina put a challenge in on Watkins. He won the ball clear as day, but Watkins dropped at floor and ref just pointed to the spot. But then Mitrovic went round Martinez in the second half. Decent finish. I mean, it was weird to see Mitrovic go around a keeper. It was like a bus trying to turn round someone. Like, it just didn't look comfortable for him. But to be fair, he got himself back on the score sheet. And then 3 goals in 11 minutes. And 2 from Trezeguet, 1 from Watkins. And Fulham just seemed to collapse. As soon as Trezeguet got his first, they just seemed to lose all concentration.
Yeah, the problem with Fulham that I have kind of noticed is as much as they are playing, you know, I keep saying the right way, the way I kind of want teams to play and building out from the back and things like that. And they have been doing that, and they've been doing it with confidence at times, but I know it's a harsh team to kind of draw that comparison against, but again, when they played against Man City a few weeks ago, the sloppiness, the passing at times, 20, 30 yards out from goal and just giving the ball away in stupid areas like that. And it's all well and good keeping the ball moving, and I fully believe in it, and you know, but you can't make mistakes like that because with players like Ollie Watkins around, they will punish you. You know, I think that Villa front line is pretty strong as it goes. You know, I don't think the world beaters by any means, but it's a decent front line with a very good goal scorer leading the line. And yeah, if you make daft mistakes, like you will get punished, and it's the other problem now. I think once you've had a season where you've mostly been losing. If you give away possession in a poor area, like very quickly, you can find yourself on the back foot and often conceding, and you know at that point you sort of mentally spiral.
Yeah, I mean, the first goal goes in, and you think, all right, okay, even coming out of this with a draw, seeing as Newcastle got a draw against Spurs, even coming out of this with a draw, you'd think Scott Parker would be quite happy. And then Tosin Adarabioyo does the same thing as what he did against Man City, where he gets the ball, panics, tries to do a Cruyff turn in his own half. He has no idea where he's going to play it. And then Keenan Davis, I think is what his name is, just attacks him, takes ball, one cross in, and then that's it. And I don't know whether it's because of how young Adarabioyo is, and maybe he's not ready to have that kind of pressure put on him to try and keep a team up, especially when points are so few and far between for Fulham. Maybe they needed a more experienced centre-half to play alongside Anderson, but I'd much rather see Fulham stay in the Premier League than see Newcastle stay in.
Yeah, I've got nothing against Newcastle per se, but the thing I always want to see from any manager is a coherent game plan and kind of a reasoning as to why you play like you do, whether it is just a philosophy of, no, I want us to play attractive football, I want us to try and play on the front foot. And I want Newcastle to get relegated because I don't want Mike Ashley making any more money than he has to. So getting relegated, so the club's worth less, so he gets less if he does sell them. And if Newcastle are going to go cheap, I'd rather them do it with a younger English manager who is at least going to try and get that group of players playing better football than they are. Because I think in that Newcastle squad, I think if they finish 14th, 13th in the league, that's probably where they should be. But they need to start playing like it. They've got some decent footballers in there, but they don't play like they do.
Yeah, what's Eddie Howe up to now?
Well, that's it. I mean, if Newcastle, to be honest, whether Newcastle stay up or go down, I'd be looking to replace Steve Bruce because I find there's nothing about that Newcastle team. I find when they've, and again, this is just kind of my experience of when I've watched them, so it's kind of in fits and spurts when I do see them, but there's not been a whole lot of fight to them. There's never been that. There's never been any grit to them where, listen, like, when you play Leeds, like, we cannot match you for stamina, we cannot match you for footballing ability, but we're going to get stuck in and we're going to get in your face. There was never any of that. It's all very passive. Like, there just needs to be someone like, even if they just got like a hard man in the middle of midfield and like, no, we're just going to kick the shit out of you for 90 minutes.
They tried that with John Joe Shelby.
It's hardly what I would consider one of footballing's hard men.
Yeah. Looks like a bit of a knob, though, doesn't he?
That's not his fault, though. I know what you mean. He does look like a knob, but that's not his fault.
Yeah, I've always been like, Newcastle seem to be one of these teams that in the summer transfer window, they always seem to sign one or two players that make you go, oh, God, I didn't expect Newcastle to sign that. But it's never a defender. It's never a midfielder. It's always some sort, like Saint Maximin was an unbelievable signing. I couldn't believe they'd got him because he was talked about in France as being one of the next best French wingers. But then again, so was Martial, and now he plays up top and doesn't score goals for Man United. So, and then they got Joelinton, who was another young Brazilian from Hoffenheim, who was supposedly going to be one of these next big clinical finishers. And they splashed, I think between them, they must have splashed 85, 90 million between the two. And they're still in a relegation fight because they've not built anything backwards.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a core of a half decent team there. Like I thought signing Jamal Lewis, I thought that was a good signing. Like he's a good young left back. Obviously they've got St. Maximan in there. I think they've actually got two decent goalkeepers between Dubravka and Darlow. I think Kieran Clark's a decent centre back. I don't think if he got partnered with someone decent, like I think you've got a solid defence there. But I feel, like I said, I feel like there's a lot of managers you could pick from who would get more out of that team than Steve Bruce does.
Yeah. Well, anyone who plays, tactics would be a great start.
Yeah, anyone with some sort of discernible style. Are we going to press them, Gaffer? I mean, if they're near you, just tackle them. Yeah. What are we going to do? Do you want the fullbacks bombing on? If you want, I don't know. Just play as wing back, yeah. Are you on the left-hand side? Yeah, good. We'll just make sure you stay there. Be fine. Do what you want then.
What do you mean Matt Ritchie ain't got the legs to play left wing back anymore?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, they missed St. Maximin when he was out. He's he should be anywhere else.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the championship table for the teams that potentially going to come up. Looks like Norwich and Watford will be the two that will come up in the promotion, automatic promotion places. And then you go into the playoffs. Brentford and Swansea both sitting on 69 points. Barnsley on 65. Reading with 63. And then Bournemouth are on 62. So they're only a point off the relegation places, but they have got a game in hand on both Reading and Barnsley. Out of the 5 teams that I've just said there that are in contention of being in the playoffs, there is others like Cardiff's on 58 and Borough's on 56, but those main 5, which one do you think would make the best fist of it in the Premier League?
In terms of having a go, I think probably Swansea. Because I still think they've got the recent experience there. They've still got a few players there who've played Premier League football, and I'd quite like that Swansea squad. And I think with a couple of additions, and I think they've got a decent track record with loan players as well, and kind of actually using them properly. You know, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Ryan Brewster last year. So it wouldn't be the worst place for a top-end Premier League team to send a couple of younger players there to get some Premier League experience. I'd love Barnsley to go up. I know the South Yorkshire. I know they're a bit of a rivalry, but for them, I'd love to see them go up because they nearly got relegated last year. Stayed up on the last day of the season, and then they had like this transformation that they've had this last probably even 18 months. Ever since they got rid of Paul Heckingbottom, really, I imagine. That was about 4 years ago now, but any chance I get to beat Paul Heckingbottom with a stick. Yeah. See, I think the problem is if you're Brentford, I don't know what pulling power you have to get decent enough players in. You know, I think they've got a very good squad there, but I don't know now whether it's London and that would mean a few more players would be willing to go. I don't know. Barnsley, I think, would be a hard sell these days. Bournemouth, you've kind of at least got the edge of they were there last year. They have recent Premier League experience as well, and they've still kind of got that core of a squad. And possibly Jack Wilshere if he stays fit.
Yeah. Jack has put Barnsley are playing brilliantly. Would love to see them up. I'd like to see Brentford finally make that step because they've been knocking on the door for the past couple of seasons, and when it's got to the very end, they seem to stumble. Like even the season where you won the league, they had a chance to go up automatically, and they dropped points to like Barnsley in the last few weeks.
It was the last game of the season, wasn't it? They threw it away at the last game of the season.
Yeah.
Where it all went wrong for them in sort of the last 5 minutes as well. If I was a Brentford fan, the thing I'd be really concerned about is them becoming the Championship's version of Peterborough, of finding these really good players, getting them in the team for a year or two, and then a bigger club going, we'll have him. And then you've got to rebuild again. And that's what I think Brentford are in danger of becoming.
Yeah, speaking of Peterborough, they are 1 point off top spot in League One with a game in hand, so they might finally actually break into the Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back when it was now. They came up in... It was while we still had Simon Grayson when they were in the Championship, so that must have been 2012, I think. It's been a while for them. I think Darren McAnthony is, as a chairman, is always an interesting one because he's one of the front-facing chairmen who's always happy to speak his mind. And I don't agree with all of what he says, but they've got a pretty good model going at Peterborough there, and you look at the players they've been able to pull in and then move on. And obviously, again, the big one for the last year is Ivan Toney, of getting him in, getting banging in goals, and then gets his move to Brentford. And I dare say when he leaves Brentford and goes wherever he goes, Peterborough probably get a nice chunk of that as well.
Yeah, when he goes to Spurs to replace Harry Kane, who's made a move to Man City.
Now, when Ivan Toney comes in to replace Sergio Aguero,
my money's on it. I reckon Man City go, no. What do you mean we've got all this money and we could spend 150 million and get Erling Haaland? You see
12,
that Tony
12.5
guy?
million. Bargain.
No, he's English. He's at least 18.
Yeah, fair point.
But I think that'll do us for this episode of Stand Your Ground. Before we do leave, I'm going to play a quick video that's going to show you all the live videos and live podcasts that go on the Buzz, whether you're watching them on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Make sure that you check these out live or check out the videos after they've gone public on our YouTube page.
War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them I'm ready, any opponent. The crown heavy and every minute is chosen. A path only fit for kings, and you don't know what this court means. What did you enlist for? If it isn't getting more rings, then you gon' have to switch your team. Trust me, it gets more mean. I'm a nightmare going up against your dreams. First step is explosive like a bomb hit. Bet if I let it fly, I cannot miss. And you ain't got a chance at the top 10 when you getting clamped all night by a locksmith. On the block throwing lobs to my top bigs. I'm a chef, no look, what's the top dish? Tie game, through the pressure as the clock ticks. Crossover, step back, hit a shot quick.
Yeah, make sure that you check out any of those live shows on the Buzz, whether you watch them live or whether you watch them afterwards. But make sure you do watch them live and get involved in the comments. But KC, it's been nice to be back. I was actually quite excited before, Man United went 1-0 down to Brighton. About talking about football, because even though it'd only been a week, it felt like it had been forever.
Oh God, yeah. International breaks are hard. I know you meant to support England and all that, but God, it's boring.
Yeah, well, we are a boring side who only play defensive football. Southgate out.
Like, I'd love to know what it was like to be a Brazil fan for like the late 90s, early 2000s. When you're watching like Ronaldo, Cafu, Roberto Carlos, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, players like that, like it must be brilliant. Or being like Spain, sort of around 2000, the late 2000s, it must be brilliant. But I'll never know.
Too defensive. Far, far, far too defensive. Now, if you want a team who play great football, Roy Hodgson's Crystal Palace, they play attacking football. And on that note,
I was going to say we've still got to watch them play. I think they play tomorrow, don't they? So something to look forward to.
Yeah, I'll watch the highlights on Tuesday. Anyway, yeah, I've been your host, Alex. I've been joined by one half of the Mighty Whites podcast, KC. Make sure that you go and follow them on Twitter at Mighty Whites Pod, and go listen to their episodes. You do them live on Twitter, Facebook, and I believe YouTube's the other one that you do them live on. But they're also a audio podcast as well. Everywhere.
If you say so, pal. Like, I don't do the technical stuff.
I'm sure Jack is somewhere writing a comment now, just writing down what he says. Just the plugs.
Just read this out. Every podcast you go on, just read this out.
And make sure you go follow at WTBdotcom on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But Casey, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, cheers for having me on again.
And we'll see you next week, same time,